Have you ever asked yourself, how's my work going to be remembered? A lot of people consider whether their work is even going to be remembered at all, but how many of them actually consider how their work is going to be remembered? As musicians and creators, our work is very liable to misinterpretation, certainly with the passage of time. And one of the artists that springs to my mind, at least when we consider this issue, is composer Edward Elgar. With the last night of the proms upon us with all its pomp and circumstance, we're asking, how easy is it for someone's work and someone's life in general to be misinterpreted? You're watching Ranger on Screen, and this is a story of Edward Elgar. Born on the 2nd of June 1857 in Lower Broadheath near Worcester in England, Edward was the fourth of 7 children. His father William was a music publisher, piano tuner and instrument seller, and due to his mother Anne converting to Roman Catholicism, he too was brought up in the Roman Catholic Church. All the Elgar children were musically trained, and by the age of 8, Edward was having violin and piano lessons. His father often took him to grand houses where he was tuning pianos so that he could show off to the wealthy customers. His mother Anne always encouraged him when it came to his musical training, especially when it came to his more pastoral style. In fact, his friend and biographer W.H. Billy Reed said that Elgar was massively influenced by the countryside. But unlike so many of the famous classical composers before him, Elgar wasn't really formally trained other than through his instrumental lessons. He was mostly self-taught through books, and after a short stint in a solicitor's office, he gave that up and started a musical career full-time. He decided against a solo performance career and he started writing and arranging pieces for small local ensembles. He started writing and arranging for more serious ensembles, and eventually he also started performing in the more pro William Stockley's orchestra based in Birmingham. This was where he said, and I quote, "I learned all the music I know." But at the time he really wasn't getting anywhere with his own musical compositions. Publishers turned him down numerous times. And then perhaps things started to change when he married one of his pupils, Caroline Alice Roberts, in 1889. For the rest of her life she ended up being his business manager, secretary and music critic as well. In fact, one of his most famous pieces, Salut d'Amour, was actually written as an engagement present for her. And she actually married him against the wishes of many of her family because of his low status and his trading background. Nonetheless though, love prevailed and they married. With Caroline at his side though, he slowly started to gain more recognition with works such as King Olaf, Caractacus, Voisin and Imperial March. But his first big success came in 1899 with his variations on an original theme, or Enigma variations. It was such a masterpiece that many at the time even regarded it as the greatest English work ever composed. And this really started perhaps his greatest compositional period. The following year, 1900, he wrote his great religious work, The Dream of Gerontius, for Voisin Orchestra, based on a poem by John Henry Newman. Though actually it took quite a while for that one's brilliance to be recognised due to a terrible premiere. After that he wrote In London Town and the famous Pomp and Circumstance marches. The first in D major being the iconic Land of Hope and Glory, or Graduation March in the US. Elgar described it as a tune that comes once in a lifetime, and he was knighted not long afterwards. His first symphony came along in 1908 and once again was met with great praise. And he had a few other successes after that too. But then World War I hit. It signalled a deep period of depression for Elgar, and nothing much major actually emerged during this time. It wasn't until 1918 to 1919 did he have another great compositional period, what would be his last as well. It included his final masterpiece, the Cello Concerto in E minor. It's clear in this piece though that his musical tone had changed too. Ian Parrott says it is a work apart, written by a lonely man in wartime who sees that artistic criteria has changed irreversibly. And I believe that he had also noted, so had the world. In 1920 Lady Elgar died, and his compositional motivation died along with her. For his remaining years he was effectively in retirement, keeping much to himself. He put out a small handful of works, but eventually he succumbed to a cancerous tumour on the 23rd of February 1934. He's remembered by the masses for all his pomp and circumstance and for the establishment he wrote for, but all this was far from the man himself with his Catholic working class background, and I believe also a lifelong history of mental illness. People often listen to Land of Hope and Glory and his other pomp and ceremony works and hear nationalism, but they very rarely hear the pain and yearning underneath all that. They don't often hear the turmoil in the harmonies of these pieces, or the emotional catharsis and the development of the fourth movement of his first symphony, say. Personally, I believe that all you need to do is listen to his cello concerto in E minor to get a sense of his true self. It's got such joy and energy, but also gut-wrenching agony. And I think his legacy also says a lot about our potential legacies as well. I think it's sad how sometimes our trials and tribulations are overlooked for our successes, just because our successes are often more palatable. And I think if we really respect creators and their work, we should praise the lows and the failures just as much as we praise the successes and the highs. They're just as much a part of who they are and their work as the highs and successes too. And I think that's certainly the case with Edward Elgar. So here's a question for you today. Are there any other creators, composers, musicians whose work you think have been seriously misinterpreted over the years? I want to hear from you. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like below and share it with anyone else you think might enjoy it. And if you're new here, it would be amazing to have you subscribe so you can join us in our mission of highlighting the importance of music and film to the world.